Welcome, listeners, but take heed. We will say whatever we need
to share our knowledge, thoughts, and joy, and even things that do annoy.
Before we begin, please be aware, we have a tendency to swear.
You have been warned, make no mistake, so join us now.
We're for Fawkes' sake.
Welcome to For Fawkes' Sake, a Harry Potter book movie compare and contrast podcast. I'm Karlee, and the summer-enjoying Gryffindor to my right is Ellen.
I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
It's the first time in forever.
Oh God, that was bad. We're even out of practice singing together.
That's fine.
But also for extra funsies, we have Abigail again too. So the Ravenclaw through our computer screen, because she does in fact not live here and was only visiting me to be in the last episodes.
Yay.
But she's joining us remotely so we can do all three of us.
Hi again.
That sounds dirty.
It's a three-way.
Oh, God.
3 girls, 1 podcast.
There is a podcast called that.
Is there really?
Yeah, there's a podcast called that.
Well then, I don't feel as clever as I thought I was there. Let's just fly into the Phoenix flashback. Last week we covered the second half of Chapter 15, The Unbreakable Vow, and the corresponding film scenes. Harry is surprised at how far girls will go for revenge, which seems silly since he knows some of them are willing to drug him to get a date. Unfortunately for them, he meets up with Luna for their friend date, and despite wearing a very silver spangly outfit, she looks relatively normal, though their conversations probably never will be. They make it to Slughorn's party, and in the book, Harry has to schmooze before he sees Hermione and uses her as an excuse to avoid an avid autobiographical author. In the movie, there is no author, but Harry does talk to Neville, who was only included as a waiter, before noticing Hermione and going to talk to her. In both, Hermione is reaping the consequences of asking Cormac to be her date and basically spends the night trying to avoid him. The party comes to a screeching halt when Filch shows up, Nazi von Douchebag II in tow. He claims he was attempting to gatecrash the party, and Snape decides to handle it. Harry decides to meddle in Snape handling it, and overhears confirmation that VD2 is in fact up to something, and that Snape is shady AF.
As always.
During episode 223, Meddling Powers Activate, our Potter pondering was, do you think Snape meant for Harry to hear the conversation between him and Malfoy?
Hey guys, it's Jackson. Here's my Potter pondering for this week. Did Snape know that Harry was listening? I don't think he did. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could argue that he use of his legitimacy and knowing what he needed to know to keep Harry alive and all that. I don't know. I just don't think he knew.
Hi, this is Jessica calling in my Potter Pondering. I'll have to say that no, I don't think that Snape specifically meant for Harry to follow and overhear them. That implies that Snape wanted Harry in the loop. He was already suspicious of Draco and just needed more proof to be taken seriously. Up until this point, it was all speculation, and I definitely don't think Snape wanted Harry to be more suspicious of him either, because Harry already didn't trust Snape anymore. Especially because of the context of this conversation with Draco, Snape was basically implicating himself too, proving to Harry that he was right not to trust him. If he wanted Harry to listen, that would mean Snape wanted Harry's suspicions to be confirmed and for him to keep on the trail of figuring out exactly how Draco intended to complete his mission. That would almost make Snape and Harry working together, and he would never do such a thing. But, I mean, Snape definitely knew his ears perked up at the dinging of the meddling bell. It was inevitable that Harry would try to eavesdrop because he couldn't resist. I think Snape found it more unfortunate than anything because no one but specific people were supposed to know what Draco was truly up to. And no one could know that Snape was basically a double or triple or quintuple or whatever agent at this point. This just lit a fire under everything Harry was already suspecting. So now Harry was just giddy to tell anyone who would listen, and I think for Snape, he would see that more as an irritation rather than it being at all helpful. So, yeah, that's what I think. Okay, bye!
Thank you so much for your responses.
Our trivia question last week was, what is the angel at the top of the Weasleys' tree?
The angel was actually a garden gnome that had bitten Fred on the ankle, so they stupefied it, painted it gold, and stuffed it into a miniature tutu.
Congratulations goes to Jessica Wallace.
Yay!
Good job.
I love the fact that this is just going back and forth between Callista and Jessica at this point. I honestly don't know who's going to get it this week. Is it going to be Jessica again? Is it going to be Callista? Is it going to be somebody else?
You never know. For now, let's dive into the first half of Chapter 16, A Very Frosty Christmas, and the corresponding film scenes.
Chapter 16, A Very Frosty Christmas, Part 1. Harry and Ron are standing at the Burrows' kitchen, peeling sprouts and discussing what Harry overheard between Malfoy and Snape. Ron is in disbelief that Snape was offering to help Malfoy, and even more shocked that he made an unbreakable vow. Harry asks why, and Ron explains that you can't break an unbreakable vow. Sarcastically, Harry mentions he worked that much out for himself and wonders what happens if you break one. Ron informs him you die, and tells a story about Fred and George trying to get him to make one when he was about 5, but their dad found them and stopped it. He describes it as the only time he's ever seen their dad as mad as their mum, and Fred reckons his left buttock has never been the same since. Harry makes a comment about passing over Fred's left buttock right as the twins join them in the kitchen and begin teasing them for having to use knives instead of magic, and causing Ron to accidentally cut his thumb. Ron tells them to wait until he's 17, and Fred yawns back that he's sure he'll dazzle them with some unsuspected magical skills. George piggybacks on the unsuspected skills comment to ask him about Lavender Brown. Though Ron turns pink and tells them to mind their business, he doesn't actually look displeased. As the twins tease him more, asking if she had an accident or something to sustain such extensive brain damage, Ron throws the sprout knife at Fred. He turns it into a paper airplane with a flick of his wand just as Mrs. Weasley walks in to see the whole thing. She yells at Ron not to ever let her see him throw knives again, and Ron says he won't, also adding, "let you see," under his breath. Mrs. Weasley then lets Fred and George know that Remus is arriving that night, so Bill is going to have to squeeze in with them. Since Charlie isn't coming home, that leaves Harry and Ron in the attic and Fleur with Ginny. She then says everyone should be comfortable and amends it to state that everyone will have a bed anyway. Fred asks about Percy, and Mrs. Weasley turns away before answering that she expects he's busy at the ministry. She leaves, and Fred suggests Percy might actually just be the world's biggest prat, before telling George they should get going. Ron begs them to help them with the sprouts so they can be free too, but Fred says they can't do that since peeling sprouts without magic is character building, and George tells Ron he shouldn't chuck knives at people he wants help from. Ron watches them set across the snowy yard and calls them gits, insisting it would have only taken them 10 seconds and they could have gone too. Harry reminds him that he couldn't since he promised Dumbledore he wouldn't wander off while staying there. Ron asks if he's going to tell Dumbledore about Snape and Malfoy, and Harry says he's going to tell anyone who can put a stop to it, and Dumbledore is at the top of the list. Plus, he's planning on having another word with Mr. Weasley. Ron says it's a pity he didn't actually hear what Malfoy was planning and figures that Dumbledore, his dad, and all of them are just going to say Snape was pretending to offer help to find out what he's up to. Harry insists that no one is that good of an actor, even Snape, and asks if Ron thinks he's right though. Ron hastily says he does, but everyone else is convinced Snape is in the order. Harry doesn't respond, as he has already imagined that would be exactly what Hermione will say too. He hasn't had a chance to tell her yet since she disappeared from Slughorn's party before he got back and wasn't in the common room after. Since he and Ron left for the Burrow early, he didn't have time to say much more than Happy Christmas and mention he has some important news for when they get back from the holidays. He isn't even sure she heard him, since Ron and Lavender were giving each other a very thorough, nonverbal goodbye. He is sure Hermione won't be able to deny that Malfoy is up to something, and is looking forward to saying, "I told you so," as he already has to Ron several times. He doesn't get a chance to speak to Mr. Weasley, who's working very long hours at the Ministry, until Christmas Eve night. They are all sitting in the living room, which Ginny lavishly decorated with paper chains. Fred, George, Harry, and Ron are the only ones who know the angel at the top of the tree is actually a garden gnome that had bitten Fred while he was pulling up carrots for Christmas dinner. They stupefied it, painted it gold, and stuffed it into a little tutu. The gnome glares down at them, looking like the ugliest angel Harry has ever seen. They're supposed to be listening to a Christmas broadcast by Mrs. Weasley's favorite singer, Celestina Warbeck, but Fleur finds her very dull and talks loudly over the music. Fred and George start a game of exploding snap with Ginny, and Ron keeps looking over at Bill and Fleur as though hoping to pick up tips. Remus Lupin stares into the fire as if he can't even hear Celestina, and Molly tears up as she reminisces to Arthur about dancing to the song, "A Cauldron Full of Hot, Strong Love," when they were 18. Mr. Weasley, who had been dozing off, sits up straighter and calls it a marvelous tune before looking over to Harry and apologizing for the music, saying, "It will be over soon."
Harry says no problem and asks if it is busy at the Ministry. Arthur confirms that it has been, and he wouldn't mind it if they were getting somewhere, but doubts that any of the 3 arrests they have made recently are real Death Eaters. He then quickly tells Harry not to repeat any of that. Harry simply asks if they are still holding Stan Shunpike, and learns they are, though Dumbledore has been trying to directly appeal to Scrimgeour. But ultimately, they want to look like they are making progress, and 3 arrests sounds better than 3 mistaken arrests and releases. He again reminds Harry this is all top secret, and Harry promises he won't say anything before asking about what he told him at the station when they were setting off to school. Mr. Weasley says he remembers and mentions searching the Malfoys' house and not finding anything. Harry tells him he read that in The Prophet, but this is something more. As he explains what he overheard between Snape and Malfoy, he notices that Lupin turns his attention to their conversation as well. When he finishes, Mr. Weasley asks if he has considered Snape was pretending, and Harry finishes his thought that he was pretending to offer help to find out what Malfoy's up to, and asks how they know. Lupin speaks up to say it isn't their business to know. It is Dumbledore's business, and Dumbledore trusts Snape, so that ought to be good enough for all of them. When Harry posits that Dumbledore might be wrong about Snape, Remus points out that people have said it, but it comes down to whether or not you trust Dumbledore's judgment. He does, therefore he trusts Snape. Harry tries to argue that Dumbledore can make mistakes and even says so himself, and asks if Lupin honestly likes Snape. Remus insists that he neither likes nor dislikes Snape. He knows they will never be friends, but he also does not forget that he made the Wolfsbane potion perfectly for him every month while he was at Hogwarts. Harry angrily brings up how he let it slip he is a werewolf, so he had to leave, and Lupin shrugs in response, saying the news would have leaked anyway. He knew he wanted his job, and he could have done so much more damage tampering with that potion, but he didn't. Harry argues that he probably didn't dare mess with the potion with Dumbledore watching, and Remus responds that Harry is determined to hate him, which he understands, being James's son and Sirius's godson. He tells Harry to tell Dumbledore, but also says he shouldn't expect Dumbledore to share his view or even be surprised by the information, since Snape may have questioned him on Dumbledore's orders. Celestina ends her song, and the program with a long, high note and loud applause comes out of the wireless that Mrs. Weasley joins in on. Fleur loudly expresses her relief that the horrible program is over, and Mr. Weasley loudly cuts her off to suggest a nightcap. He stands to get eggnog, and Harry asks Lupin what he's been up to lately. Lupin explains he's been underground amongst the werewolves, since nearly all are on Voldemort's side, and Dumbledore wanted a spy among them. He seems to realize he sounds a little bitter, and adds that he isn't complaining because it is necessary work and he is well qualified to do it. It has been difficult to gain their trust since he has clearly lived amongst wizards. Harry wonders why they like Voldemort, and Lupin says they think they will have a better life under his rule. When he said it is hard to argue with Greyback out there, Harry wonders who that is. Remus is surprised. Harry hasn't heard of him, but explains that he is probably the most savage werewolf alive, who seems to be on a mission to bite as many people as possible and specializes in children. He hesitates, then shares that it was Greyback who bit him when he was a kid, because his father offended him. He didn't know who had bit him for the longest time, and used to feel pity for him, because he knows what it is like to transform and lose control. But Greyback deliberately positions himself to strike, and that is who Voldemort is using to marshal the werewolves. He is struggling to make much headway against Greyback's insistence that they deserve blood and they should take revenge on normal people. Harry insists that Lupin is normal, just has a problem, and Remus laughs, saying he reminds him of James, who used to call it his furry little problem. He accepts a glass of eggnog from Mr. Weasley, looking more cheerful, and Harry feels a rush of excitement at the mention of his father. He asks Lupin if he had ever heard of the Half-Blood Prince. Lupin smiles and said there aren't any wizarding princes, asking Harry if he is thinking of adopting the title. Harry indignantly retorts that it doesn't have anything to do with him. It is someone who used to go to Hogwarts. He explains that he has his old potions book and wrote spells all over it, like Levicorpus. Lupin reminisces about the spell being popular during his 5th year, and Harry mentions seeing his dad use it on Snape. Lupin's smile is too understanding as he tells Harry he wasn't the only one. Harry presses the matter before abandoning pretense and flat out asking if it was Sirius or him. Remus says he definitely isn't and asks how old the book is for a clue as to when the prince was at Hogwarts. The night is brought to an end when Fleur decides to imitate Celestina Warbeck. The look on Mrs. Weasley's face sends everyone to bed, and Harry and Ron climb all the way to Ron's attic room.
The movie section opens as the Hogwarts Express travels through the snowy landscape, and Ron's voice asks about the unbreakable vow. The scene changes to show the boys in a compartment, as Ron questions if Harry is sure that's what Snape said. Harry insists he is positive and asks why. When Ron tells him you can't break an unbreakable vow, Harry sarcastically responds that he's worked that much out for himself, thanks. Ron begins to say he doesn't understand, but is interrupted when Lavender approaches their compartment door. Instead of entering, she breathes on the glass, draws a heart, and writes R+L inside it as Ron watches with an uncomfortable smile, and Harry begins playing with the seat to avoid making eye contact. She adds arrows and XX before breathing on it again and mouthing, "I'll miss you." When she walks off, Harry just says, "Lovely," and Ron complains that his lips are getting chapped because all she wants to do is snog him. He leans forward to show his friend his lips, and Harry cringes back, telling him he'll take his word for it. They both look out the window again, just in time to see Hermione walk by and notice the heart too. She briefly hesitates, then walks right past it as Ron watches, looking a little upset. Harry then asks what happens when you break an unbreakable vow, and Ron says, "You die." The camera focuses on the heart as Ron and Harry blur out of view behind it, before it cuts to a magical little figure ice skating atop a cake as Fred and George pull a cracker, watched by Ron and Mrs. Weasley. Harry is in the sitting room talking to Remus, Tonks, and Mr. Weasley about what he overheard between Snape and Malfoy. Remus is making a comment about how Voldemort choosing Draco Malfoy for a mission, and Harry retorts that he knows that it sounds mad. When Remus suggests that Snape was pretending to offer Draco help so he could find out what he's up to, Mrs. Weasley's voice can be heard calling for Ginny, as Harry insists that wasn't what it sounded like. Tonks speaks up to tell Remus that Harry could be right if he really made an unbreakable vow. Lupin cuts her off to say it comes down to whether or not you trust Dumbledore's judgment. Since Dumbledore trusts Snape, he does too. When Harry points out that even Dumbledore has said that he makes mistakes, Remus accuses Harry of being blinded by hatred. Harry insists that he isn't, but Lupin tells him he is and reminds him that people are disappearing daily and they can only place their trust in a handful of people. If they start fighting amongst themselves, they're doomed. Mrs. Weasley calls again for Ginny, and Tonks gets up and walks away. Remus follows after her, leaving Harry and Mr. Weasley in the sitting room. Ginny walks in with a plate full of food and sits next to Harry, prompting her dad to also get up and walk out of the room. She tells Harry to open up, asking if he trusts her when he hesitates, and then feeds him a bite of food from the plate. As Harry chews and says it's good, Ron enters the room with a plate full of mini pies and sits on the couch right between them. He offers one to Harry, who turns it down, then awkwardly takes a bite of one and sets it back down as the three sit in silence. The fuck, Ronald Weasley.
Yeah, I really have to wonder if Ron knows what he's doing in that moment.
He absolutely does.
I'm not
Just
sure
his face.
he does. He's so oblivious.
I think because the only reason I think he did is because they're sitting so close and he purposely goes and positions himself between them.
I agree with Karlee. Like, you see it on his face that it's intentional.
I can see where you guys are coming from, but at the same time, the movies love to make Ron such an idiot that he also could have just...
Yeah, but this is one time they're not making him a dimwit. They're making him...
Yeah, they're starting to make him more intelligent because we'll get to the seventh one when he's the one that figures out that it's...
That's true.
Regulus.
All right, I'll concede.
2 against 1.
Oh no, what did I do to myself?
Majority wins. Hey, I am a Raven Puff, so... Like,
I love that we all... I mean,
I'm
you're
a
full
Hufflepuff.
Huff. You're full Huff.
I'm full.
You're full Huff.
I'm
You're
a full
full
Huffle.
Puff. But then I'm Griffin Puff, so we
Yeah.
all have the Puff in us.
I'm a Huffleclaw,
Yes.
actually.
You still have Puff in you.
I do.
That's the
That
point.
sounds dirty.
Huff and Claw, Raven Puff.
You're a Griffin Puff?
We're like yin and yang.
I think so.
Blue and yellow.
Anyway, I definitely have Ravenclaw tendencies and Slytherin tendencies. It's just that the Gryffindor is so up top that I don't know.
Yeah, and the houses really are just another like
Yeah.
personality test. We have bits of all of it in us. It's just what's
I will say
dominant.
I did take a percentage test, and I had 0% Slytherin. So
I don't know why that doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
I need to take a percentage
Yeah, I'll
test.
see if we can
it
find
was on
again.
BuzzFeed.
That'd be
I'll
fun.
see if I can find it.
And then we can post it on
Yeah, we can
our
post
page
it,
too, just
for
for
sure.
funsies. So
That's great.
I'm genuinely impressed with the way that these two correspond. There's some definite similarities.
Some dings.
There's also some things that I'm like, why? Why?
Open up, you.
Oh my god. No, I can't. But there's another moment that's coming up in the second half of this that's even worse. But that is still just But then they left out some of the fun stuff. Like, I would have really liked to see Fleur being an absolute bitch about Celestina Warbeck.
You know what? I would not, but it's fine. That scene really makes me angry. But I would like to see the twins teasing Ron about not being able to do magic yet and then making him cut his finger.
I know.
And then Ron throwing a knife at them and them changing it.
Because that is where it starts out. And it's comparable in the sense that the conversation they're
burrow.
having is basically the same.
Yeah.
But in the movie, they're on the train. In the book, they're in the Burrow's kitchen. But other than that, the words they're expressing to one another are quite similar.
Yeah.
So it's like a half ding.
Sounds like a halfling ding.
I feel like this is the moment that you've been waiting for because you've made reference to this before, Karlee. Because Ron is telling Harry all about the unbreakable vow, starting with the ever so obvious, well, you can't break it.
Well, who would have thought?
Thanks. That wasn't obvious, bud.
Okay. Gotcha.
That isn't what they do when you get married, right? Because Fleur and Bill, when they get married, they made sure to put in very similar things. And I'm like, dude, you cheat on your wife, you die? Get it. That's my kind of loyalty.
I was just worried, like, what would count as cheating on your wife? Would that, like, would an emotional affair kill you?
You guys are going to get scared of me. I would hope. I'm that person.
No, that's totally
not
fair.
very
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuffy.
Actually,
I think that's actually
true
quite
loyalty.
Hufflepuff.
It is. It's all about the loyalty, honestly. It's like, oh, emotionally cheated on me? It's still just as bad.
Yes.
You weren't being loyal.
I'm very torn between I think that's what it should be and knowing what divorce rates are, at least
Yeah.
in the Muggle world, like, that's a lot. Like, I don't know that they can afford to.
They've literally never talked about wizards being divorced.
Yeah.
So, you just have to stay, man.
Interesting.
I'm intrigued.
Apparently you wanted to talk about that too, but I was referring
I know.
to the moment that Ron shares with Harry that Fred and George tried to get him to make an unbreakable vow when he was like 5.
When he was 5, which means they were 7, which means they're fucking geniuses. They're so fucking smart. Can you imagine doing that kind of magic at 7 years old? You don't even have a wand.
I want to know how they knew how to do it.
You know they're reading books.
It's impressive.
Yeah. They're like the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates of the wizarding world.
Together.
Yes.
We don't need no education.
They're so smart.
They are. No, I'm with you there. I just knew that you really wanted to share that
I
moment.
mean, it might not necessarily be smarts. It might just literally be their innate magic that they have so much.
They're intuitive.
They're intuitive. They have that very good magic. I mean, they turned Ron's teddy bear into a spider.
Yeah.
When they were 5 and he was 3.
It's just that knack for causing trouble. They
It's
just
gotta be
can't.
something.
They can't push it down. It just happens.
I mean, I get it.
I mean, and they come from a very long line of very good wizards. Like,
Yes, they
as
do.
much as people talk crap about the Weasleys, they know their shit.
oh yeah, they really.
They're
do.
from 2 of the Sacred 28 families.
Yeah,
right.
So, like, their magic is so old.
It's like sacred squared.
Sacred squared. And then they're twins, so it's squared again.
Whoa.
Cubed.
Yeah. It's
Is
like,
that cubed?
they're
Or are
like
we-
the
Is
Nepo.
there
Cubed is 3.
Yeah.
yeah.
Quadded. I don't know.
Sacred quad.
I used
like
to-
sacred squared though. That has episode title potential.
Yeah, but they are like the Nepo babies of the wizarding world.
They
Yes,
are.
absolutely. But they don't get the respect that they deserve for that.
No, because they're poor.
It's just amazing because they're not even poor.
Right.
They have 7 fucking kids. Like
You definitely see their money problems trend downward. Like, they're not having, like...
they make more money and they have less expenses of kids.
Yeah, so it's like, towards the end of the book, they're not even really talking about being poor anymore.
Right.
Right.
So,
And let's be honest, the real reason is because they're gingers.
It's true.
hold on.
I can say that Abigail's a ginger. I'm poking fun
At me.
at the at Abigail and your baby, but
Back off.
It's all right.
I was just joking. Mm-hmm. Anywho, I really would have loved to get this aspect of it because as
Just brotherly moment. I
right
love it.
as Harry and Ron are talking about the unbreakable vow, the twins do actually come in the kitchen and not really join in the conversation because they come in as Harry is saying something about passing over Fred's
Fred
left buttock.
Yeah. So good.
That just makes me so happy. I just really wish that we had more whimsical like that in the movies because the whimsy they gave us, sometimes it was gold, sometimes it was cringe, which we'll get to.
Ugh.
But it leads to that very, like you were saying, brotherly moment where they're like bickering because the twins are teasing Ron and Harry about not being able to use magic yet because they're not at age, and then that morphs into them teasing Ron about having a girlfriend, which Ron is both bothered by and not bothered by.
Shook. How do you know?
He's kind of pleased that they know he's getting some action. Like, this has got to raise their estimation of him in their eyes a little bit. But at the same time, it's more fodder for teasing. And they literally ask Ron what happened to Lavender to cause her to sustain such a mental damage that she thought it'd be cool to date Ron.
You know what? I kind of agree.
I mean, is there any doubt in your mind that there is not something wrong with that girl after watching her in the movie? Especially?
Good God.
No, they did a good job of making her look absolutely batshit crazy.
I think she just is. She's a little crazy.
Yeah.
I saw her. Yeah. I saw her do a little like meetup with Rupert at
The
Comic-Con.
reenactment
Yeah.
of the necklace thing.
Woo.
Yeah.
Woo. I
I've
stressed.
I've watched a couple of her like little videos up on social media and I'm like, you are a unique individual and I'm so glad that makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
She's very like Luna-esque, I think.
I wonder if she auditioned for Luna and didn't get it. And they were like, oh, but you can play Lavender.
We got you.
I want to know who told the twins. Was it Ginny?
Oh yeah, definitely was. They said in the book.
Did they say it's
Yeah.
Ginny? Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately for Ron, he responds to this by throwing a knife the sprout knife at Fred. And Fred, being good at magic, literally just waves his wand and turns that knife into a paper airplane.
Nonverbal magic.
And all of this happens as Mrs. Weasley is walking into the kitchen. So Ron's caught red-handed. And naturally she yells. And again, the little bits of sass and stuff that you don't usually get. Because she's yelling at her son to never let her see him throw knives again. And Ron's like, I won't let you see.
Yeah, which is perfect because, like, that's shit I used to do to my mom growing up.
Right?
It's
No,
like, oh, I can relate to this because I did that same crap when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's perfect. But no,
I appreciate
we don't get this.
that Mrs. Weasley yells because sometimes when I get loud with my toddler, I feel bad. But if Mrs. Weasley can do it, I can do it.
There you go.
Sometimes you just need to be heard.
Sometimes.
I love this part too because Mrs. Weasley's talking about how many people they're packing into the burrow, and she's like, well, Fred and George, Remus is coming tonight, so Bill is going to be joining you, and that way he can take Bill's room. And then since Charlie's not coming home, Harry and Ron will be in the attic. We'll have to put Fleur with Ginny, and everyone should be comfortable. And Fred's just like, oh, Ginny's going to love that. And Mrs. Weasley's just like, well, everyone will have a bed anyway. And she just looks really like flustered because hosting is nuts.
Yeah. But can we talk about how they could make their lives easier if they just set up that fucking tent in their yard?
Right?
There's like 3 rooms in it. Enjoy. There's a bathroom. Goodbye. Come over later.
Honestly, that's brilliant. And you should write that into the Weasley family. To be like, we got you.
Here's some tents. It's like when you use your camper for a guest house.
Right. Totally. But in all of this discussing or listing off of the sleeping arrangements, Fred asks about Percy because she never mentioned him, and Mrs. Weasley has to turn away before answering because she's really sad and trying to not show that, and she just manages to casually say, oh, I expect he's busy at the ministry. And she leaves, and Fred's just like, could be busy, or perhaps he's just the world's biggest prat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And he is at this point. He is the world's biggest prat.
I think that this, though, shows how much Mrs. Weasley loves all of her children because Percy's right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that would probably get glossed over frequently. But she's like, I miss him so much.
Yeah.
Because all kids have their own little personalities that they bring to your family.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like, good mama moment. I like it.
Yeah. At this point, Fred and George are like, we should probably get going. And Ron's like, no, stay, help us with the sprouts, then we can be free too. And Fred is like, no, I don't think we can. Builds character, peeling sprouts without magic. Have fun with that. And then George is like, yeah, you probably shouldn't throw knives at people you want to help you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really good life advice, I think.
It is. It is good knife advice. Life advice. It's good knife advice and life advice. But it's also, again, true to reality. Like, anytime I went to go help or go to holiday stuff, I was always given tasks. And when I would try to rope in my siblings or my cousins, or God forbid, sometimes my uncles or my aunts, like I would be left by myself. They'd just walk off like, oh, I can't help with that. And some of them wouldn't even finish the sentence.
Rude.
Right?
Wow.
It's just like, oh, okay, yep, I'll just do this and I'll be a better person because of it.
I'll stay away from my family while I'm peeling potatoes. We get the conversation, like you said, the essence of the conversation that
The
they're
unbreakable
having.
vow part.
Yes. We get that while they're on the train, but it's interrupted by this weird ass Lavender moment where she comes up to the glass and draws a heart. She didn't come in. Like, you would think he's your boyfriend. Like, I would just go in and be like, hi, I missed you, whatever. No, she has to make it weird. And she fogs up the glass and draws a heart on it and draws some arrows and spurs. And was I this stupid at 16?
Probably.
God.
But even the way she fogs up the glass was just the most just like she was just over the top and so dramatic, and Ron and Harry's faces during it Like Rupert Grint and Daniel Radcliffe.
Dan pulling the
Oh,
thing.
like when Harry just starts pulling on the seat
like,
and
"Oh,
just
I
like
didn't notice
can't make
this."
eye contact. And the entire time, Ron's grin is more of a grimace, but he's like trying to
Shook.
look like, "Oh, I really appreciate this." It is comedy gold, but so cringy.
Yeah, it's
I just-
the
I can't
behavior
believe
you
I was
expect
that
to see from somebody who's taken a love potion.
Hmm.
But she hasn't. She's just that nuts.
Oh my god, now I really think that Lavender made herself a love potion and put Ron's hair in it.
Maybe. I always come in with the weirdest angles.
I wonder, is that how you get it to be a specific person? It's like a polyjuice potion. You have to put the person's DNA in it.
That's what I assumed.
Okay, well, now we got research to do before the next
Maybe not.
episode.
I don't know. I could have just completely like briefly. How do you like target a specific person?
You put your specific DNA in it. What if you put your DNA in it? Right? Is that what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's what. Well,
How does a love potion work?
Like Merope could spit in the
gross.
the lemonade and be like, "Here."
Yeah, because she wanted him to fall for her.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like it would have to have something to tie you straight to that person.
Unless it's your magic, because your magic ties to you too.
maybe. But like when
We
you
can get
buy a
into the
love
golden
potion
compass
from Fred and
dust.
George,
Yeah.
how does that potion like when
When Romilda Vane put it in the thing, how did
the chocolates?
Yeah.
And then Ron ended up eating them later.
he ate her hair?
He was all about Romilda Vane.
It's like the Wizarding World.
So
of
it has
Buffalo
to
Bill.
tie to the person who made it somehow.
Cuts off my finger, puts it in there. That's what Peter
Yikes.
Pettigrew was doing.
Ew.
Ah.
That's probably the only way he'd get any action.
Oh God! Stop.
He wasn't as gross in the books, to be fair. He was supposed to be kind of like a Neville-ish type.
They did describe him as being kind of rat-like. I guess rats can be cute.
Well, they
I love a
can,
good rat.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm Willard.
Anywho, it is a very cringeworthy scene that has led to some even more cringeworthy conversations, I think.
Yeesh.
And was it necessary?
No.
Did we need that? What I do like about it, even though once in the second half of this section, we do get a brief moment where the necklace exists.
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, very much felt like Ron getting that necklace, even though it wasn't. And that does actually kind of happen.
Mm-hmm. It does. We see briefly, but
I liked it in that aspect. It felt like a very abstract ding, we'll go with.
I think it's good to show that he's like regretting his life choices right now.
As he should be, honestly.
Probably.
It turns out a lot of snogging doesn't make up for all the crazy.
No.
No. Don't stick it in crazy, Weasley. Jesus Christ.
Even if it's just your tongue.
Even if it's just your tongue.
Probably.
Ew.
Ha. Anyway. Yeah, obviously, from here it changes a little bit more because even though Harry and Ron do end up at the Burrow in the movie, they're already there in the book. That allows for more things to happen at the Burrow than the movie will ever give us.
Mm-hmm.
True story.
So Ron sees Fred and George leave. They're walking across the snowy yard. And he's just like, if they had just helped, they would have been done in 10 seconds and we could have gone too. And Harry's just like, well, I couldn't have. I told Dumbledore I wouldn't wander off while I'm here. And Ron wants to know if he's going to mention what he overheard between Snape and Malfoy to Dumbledore. And Harry's just like, hell yeah, I am. I'm going to tell everybody who can do something about it. Which really boils down to like maybe 2 people. Maybe. His list is basically Dumbledore and Mr. Weasley. And then, of course, Ron, in an intelligent moment, says, like, you know that everybody's just going to say Snape was pretending to help so he could just find out what he's up to.
It feels so foolish to me that the screenwriters left this conversation out. Because it really shows, like, this specific part of the conversation is left out of the Unbreakable Vow conversation.
Right.
And it shows how suspicious Harry was of Draco and of Snape at this point. And they chose to leave it out. And I'm like, Y'all are like building Alan Rickman up to be this lovable character, and Snape fucking sucks.
Right. They did not do a good job showing the side of Snape. It almost seemed silly that Harry hated him as much as he did in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they showed that as much to the extent that it was in the books either.
Yeah.
But he was never that horrible to him in the movie.
Yeah.
He wasn't great to him, but
No, not
he
by any
wasn't that horrible.
He stands in front of him to protect him from
Right.
Remus Werewolf Lupin.
And personally, considering where we know Snape is going to end up, story-wise, character-wise, character arc, whatever you want to call that, personally, I feel like, with that being the case, the movie did it better. They shouldn't have made us hate him quite that much if they wanted him to end up being on the decent side.
Character.
I say decent side. He was doing things for the good side, but he still was messed up. If they wanted him to be a character that Harry felt like he should name his son after, I think the books turned too hard into him being an absolute douchebag. And the movies kind of fixed that.
Kind of.
I don't know. It's a lot, though, and you're right that he really did. You're right that this really did show just how suspicious he is of them both, and we didn't quite get that in the movie.
They kind of have the conversation. Later on, Remus is telling him he's blinded by hatred and that he hates Snape.
You mean Remus is yelling at him that he's blinded?
That he... Oh, I'll get there.
Yeah,
I
we'll
have
get
a rant on that one.
I believe it. And yeah, even Harry's response to this is to be like, nobody is that good of an actor, not even Snape.
Alan Rickman absolutely is, so back the fuck
Right.
up, Harry.
I feel like you might be wrong there, Harry. You are maybe a little bit blinded by hate, let's be honest.
But not in the yelly, screamy way.
No.
So I guess maybe it's a hot take, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I feel like the book does a better job with the redemption story because I think you do need to hate him as much as you do reading the books. And you need to see what all it is that Harry is focusing or honing in on. And then you see, like, you get the whole connection, and it just makes sense to me. It makes more sense to me.
I actually do agree with you there because I personally don't have a problem with the redemption. I just know a lot of people do. So I was trying to speak from, like, a broader perception of Snape.
Yep.
I think that it's easy to forget that we see him through Harry's eyes, and Harry did really hate him. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it did kind of feel like too little too late on the redemption.
I agree with that. I also hate Snape with a burning passion. So.
She does.
I don't,
love
but
Snape,
we talked about in one of the last episodes I recorded that, like, I'm all about that person just needs more love.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, but good God, get some therapy in the wizarding world.
Oh, no, we say that. I definitely made sure to introduce Abigail to that phrase. So, anyway, Harry is really concerned that Ron maybe doesn't believe him still. And he's like, but you believe me, right? And Ron's like, oh, yeah, I do. I believe you at this point. Malfoy is 100% up to something. But Snape is totally shady AF, but everybody else is convinced that he is in the order.
Yeah.
And Harry doesn't say anything because that's just kind of his MO at this point in his life amongst his best friends. But he
That sucks.
really at this point doesn't say anything because he already knows that's exactly what Hermione is going to say to him also when he finally gets the chance to bring it up to her because she disappeared from Slughorn's party before he ever came back from meddling and then must have gone right to bed because she wasn't in the common room.
And then avoid.
Right. Oh God. But then he and Ron left for the Burrow super early, and he basically only had the time to say, Happy Christmas! I've got something to share with you, but it'll have to wait, essentially. My favorite part about this, because I think I mentioned this in one of our previous episodes with Abigail, is that Harry is just like, I know without a doubt that they can't deny Malfoy is up to something, and he's really looking forward to going, fucking told you so!
Yeah, I would be
Which he has
really
to Ron
looking
several
forward to
times.
that myself.
Yeah. I knew it! I fucking knew it!
He's such a Gryffindor.
I know. I love it. So he did mention to Ron that he was going to tell Dumbledore and also wanted to talk to Ron's dad, but he doesn't get the chance to do that until Christmas Eve night because he's just so busy at the Ministry.
What kind of government job? Lord.
Well, they are in a moment of crisis. It's like pre-war.
Yeah, still.
But Christmas Eve night, he does in fact get to have the night off. And they're all sitting around the living room, all of the guests. So this is basically the Weasleys minus Charlie and Percy and plus Lupin. And Harry, of course. And Fleur, who is close to becoming a Weasley. Although that is not how it was in the movie.
No.
Because Tonks was there since they've just decided to already make Tonks and Lupin a thing at this point.
Explodes with anger.
And Fleur was not there because they prefer to just like surprise us with that relationship in the 7th one.
Explodes with anger. It's so stupid.
I love the fact that they describe the sitting room as being lavishly decorated by Ginny to the point that it looks like a paper chain explosion.
I feel like, what else do you have to do?
Right.
Like, I'm just going to make these paper chains and think about Harry.
And that Fred, George, Harry, and Ron are the only ones who know what that angel is on top of the tree because there was a garden gnome that bit Fred on the ankle while he was trying to pull up carrots for the Christmas dinner.
Which was our trivia question.
Yep. And they stupefied it, painted it gold, and stuffed it into a little tutu.
That's my favorite thing. And I love that they say it's glaring down
I
at them.
know. So this is another moment I was saying, I know you don't like this moment and didn't care that we didn't see it, but I would have loved to see, I say you to now I have to exactly.
You, Karlee.
You, Karlee. I have to specify who I am directing this comment to, but you were the one who mentioned it earlier, Karlee, so they'll figure it out. Anyway, you had mentioned not liking this moment, but I kind of loved the fact that Mrs. Weasley is like all excited and just into the Celestina Warbeck program through their wireless, and Fleur is just like, la la la, this is so horrible.
Horrible.
I guess-
Horrible.
I guess I wouldn't have minded if it was in the movie because I don't like the action. But I think it's character building
Yes.
information. So it would have been okay if it was included in the movie. It just bothers me. You're not rude to your future mother-in-law.
No, she is so rude. She's being so rude.
Yeah, she's being
I don't know
horrible
if she
to her.
knows she's
Horrible.
being... I don't know if she knows she's doing that. Like, maybe she's just being French, but... What I love about it, aside from the fact that Fleur is just like obliviously holding conversations over the music and Mrs. Weasley keeps turning it up and turning it up, is the louder the music gets, the more everybody else is able to use that to cover that they're not listening either. So Fred and George start playing Exploding Snap with Ginny, and Ron just keeps like throwing furtive glances at Bill and Fleur like he's trying to figure out how to pick up tips. So
Are they like ferociously making out in the middle of
that's
this?
what I was trying to understand. Tips on what?
Bill is not that way.
I mean, during dinner, Fleur was feeding him bits of turkey.
That's different than making out in the middle of your mom's favorite Christmas Eve tradition.
You know what? It's entirely possible that...
William Weasley is not that kind of
no,
person.
but I think Ron is watching them interact in a manner that is not making out and trying to figure out how to do that too,
Yeah,
because that's
okay.
all they do.
That's fair.
I was going to say
Maybe
that
he's
makes
like,
the most
let's
sense.
have a
And
conversation.
Just,
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Like, I think feeding food to your significant other is just as cringy as making out in front of other people, depending on how you do it.
I
Yeah.
would like to share that Karlee was taking a sip of her coffee at that moment, but agreed with you so wholeheartedly she almost choked as she gave a thumbs up.
I know, I saw that. I saw
I
that
just
through
needed
my game of
I needed
Wizarding
our
Peekaboo.
listeners to picture it as well.
Yes. Yes. Karlee and I are on
know-
the same page about that. It's freaking gross. Don't do it, please.
It's weird. I do love when you listen to the audiobooks and it's Jim Dale that he sings these songs.
Oh my god, it
It's
is
so cute.
amazing. It is so fucking funny.
He's so cute.
So, like I said, in the books, Remus is there, though Tonks is not, and he's just staring into the fire, like lost in his own world.
This makes me sad.
I kind of like to believe that he is actually hearing the music and it's making him think of Tonks. I'm
yeah,
just saying.
a cauldron full of hot, strong love.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. But then Molly's just like, oh, Arthur, I love this song. Do you
And
remember
he's
when he
asleep.
danced to it when we were 18? And Arthur's just like, what? Oh, yes. It's a marvelous tune.
So I specifically cited that leaving this world building out makes me so angry because this is such a world building moment. They never give us downtime in the movies.
No.
And my favorite thing about the Magicians TV show that they did was they always showed us downtime. They showed Quentin playing with his cards and being weird and stuff like that, and they showed them doing casual magic. And they don't do that in these movies, and it's fucking annoying.
You're
We
right.
got little tiny bits and pieces of it in the third movie, and that was really it. Like,
The scene when it's in this one, they're sitting in the common room and Ron's talking about how he's like, oh, I almost lost the ball on the last hit or whatever. He's talking about tryouts for Quidditch. That's the most downtime we get.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm like, bruh.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's world building. It's important. It's building characters' relationships with other characters and your relationship to the characters.
And I know we've said this before. I think I even said it with you, Abigail, is that kind of stuff is the magic too. Like, magic is not just casting spells. It is the parts of the stories that make you love it.
Yeah. And I'm hoping in the series we see a lot more of that. I do think one of the reasons why we get more of that in The Magicians is because it is a series. They can take longer time building things out. In the movies, it's just so much more fast moving because they've got this finite amount of time to tell the story.
Yeah, agreed. I really hope that they do too.
they're going to do, I think the show's going to be good.
I really hope
And
so.
I already have high hopes, which is bad because I'm going to be let down.
They better not screw it up, is all I can say.
We'll see.
We will rip them a new one in that new season of this podcast. What I love especially about all of this moment is after Mr. Weasley like wakes up and, oh, marvelous tune, he turns to Harry and just goes, sorry about this, it'll be over soon. And I love all of it's just so cute. And
So the Wizarding Wireless is playing Celestina Warbeck. They must do it every Christmas
yeah,
Eve.
this is like a Christmas
It's like
thing.
reading a Christmas carol or something.
Yeah.
It's like their own little version of that. And I like that. They have
Yeah.
a little Christmas Eve tradition on the Wizarding Wireless.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, I think it's also, I think maybe in the vision of some of the Christmas traditions that Great Britain has.
Yeah,
the
British
UK
people
has,
have,
period.
yeah.
But I also think about like the friends I had who are like, oh, we've got this horrible family tradition where we have to listen to this story every Christmas Eve. And it just makes me sad. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yep, that's what this is right now. It's their version of Gift of the Magi.
But it makes Mrs. Weasley really happy.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Which
and
is
I
why
feel
Mr.
like
Weasley sits through
everybody should honor that for her.
it. Fleur Delacour.
She needs to get on that train.
Yeah, stop being so horrible.
So this conversation starts off, there's a little bit more information than the movie gets us, but then it sort of morphs into the same conversation we do get in the movie. But I don't like the fact that we weren't given this aspect of it because Mr. Weasley kind of takes over the shouldn't have said that moment that Hagrid built for us in the movies. And I really would have loved to see that as well. And they just left this part out. But Harry asks him if it's been busy at the ministry, which kind of a duh since he's been at work nonstop. But when Arthur says that it has been, and he's like, I wouldn't care if we were actually doing something, but we're not achieving anything. None of these arrests, they've had 3 arrests recently. He's like, I don't think any of them are real Death Eaters. And then he's like, well, shouldn't have told you that. Just please don't repeat that, Harry. And Harry's just like, are they still holding Stan Shunpike?
Yeah, they
and
are.
yeah,
Why not?
Mr. Weasley says they are, and Dumbledore's been trying to directly appeal to Scrimgeour, but they want it to look like they're doing something, and saying, oh, we've got 3 arrests sounds way better than, well, 3 mistaken arrests and releases, so we're back to square one.
Yeah.
And then he's like, again, this is all top secret. I am not telling you this.
You know what, though? I feel like Harry Potter should be included in...
We've talked about that before, that
That.
I wonder how much less Harry would meddle if
he was
people would
actually
just
included.
clue him in.
Yeah. No.
I
don't.
do also think that it could trigger more meddling, but
but it might do the opposite.
There are some things that he really should be told. And I think knowing this aspect was really helpful, especially when he encounters the minister later on in this chapter.
Ugh.
That doesn't happen in the movie at all.
Well,
But this is what then transitions into Harry telling Mr. Weasley about the whole Nazi von Douchebag II and Snape encounter. And since Lupin is within earshot, he actually like kind of perks up and starts listening too. So the conversation then becomes kind of similar to the movie.
except tone.
Except the tone is way off.
I put this further down once
can
we
say it now if you
get
want.
to the thing, but it's a streamlined version of the conversation that they're going to have. But why does the movie not give us the building of Harry and Remus's relationship? Because in this moment, Remus in the David Thewlis in this moment he's livid at Harry
He's like
for no
screaming at
reason.
him.
For no reason. And I hate that because that is not how Remus is. He is calm, cool, collected. When
He
he has
never would've
control
yelled.
over his emotions, he has control over his emotions, because once a month, he does not have control over himself. So at all times when he is not a werewolf, he is in control. That's why he doesn't drink. That's why he doesn't smoke. That's why he is calm, cool, collected Remus Lupin. And I'm really fucking angry at this part. It's yuck.
Can you guess who Carly's favorite character is?
I mean, yeah, it's Remus. And I don't blame her.
serious.
It's actually serious, but
He's second favorite, but this is really fucking annoying.
Yeah, it is.
Like-
It's a really important part of knowing Remus and developing the sympathy / empathy for him that's necessary to really love his character.
yeah.
And they skip so much in this moment. Like, he even takes the time to explain his backstory of how he became a werewolf.
I know,
And they
none of
skip
that.
it.
None of that at all.
Yeah.
And I'm just, oy.
Yeah, so the conversation starts off, like I said, just talking about what's going on at the ministry into what Harry overheard. The two say exactly what Ron predicted they would say and what Harry assumed Hermione would predict that they'd say, that Snape is pretending to offer help to find out what Malfoy's up to. And you even have a similar conversation, aside from tone, about how Harry asks Lupin if, like, you really like Snape? Do you trust him? And Lupin's like, it's not about liking him. He's like, what it boils
like
down
or
to
dislike him.
is Dumbledore trusts Snape, so that's good enough for all of us. And Harry tries to say that Dumbledore could be wrong. He's even admitted he makes mistakes. And Lupin is very calmly, just like, again, it boils down to whether or not you trust Dumbledore's judgment. I do, so I trust Snape.
Yeah.
And it's the words up to that point that were used in the movie.
I hate that they also cover for the anger, I think, a bit towards. Oh, we don't get it in this one.
No, it's
but
gonna be
I'm
in the next
gonna
one.
say
Yeah,
it
mention it.
because Tonks is like, the first few nights of the cycle are always rough, and I'm like, bitch, that's
Okay.
not why you guys are covering.
Can we just talk about the fact that it was legitimately night and he still wasn't a werewolf?
I think she meant the first few nights, like it's
Leading
like
up
PMS.
to it. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like PMS.
I was about to say that too. No. It's,
have, like,
it's
a
the
week.
His cycle.
pre-part
It's his
of it.
cycle.
Yeah,
I guess.
It's
I don't
leading
know.
up to.
But you're right. It did feel like an excuse.
for why he's so not him.
But like, no, in the book, Lupin is so reasonable. He's
He
like,
is.
you know what? I don't like him. I don't dislike him. I know we're not going to be friends. There's too much bad history there. But I'm never going to forget that he made that wolfsbane potion for me perfectly every month when I was at Hogwarts. And Harry's just like, yeah, but he let it slip. You were a werewolf and you had to leave. And Lupin was just like,
It was probably gonna happen eventually.
exactly. And we all knew that Snape wanted my job. He could have done so much worse if he had tampered with that potion. And he
Yeah.
didn't do that. And Harry's just like, well, probably didn't dare to do it in front of Dumbledore. And Remus is just like, I can see you're determined to hate him, which is understandable. You're James's son and Sirius's godson. Like, this is what it is.
Truthfully, Sirius had no reason to dislike Snape other than he was Snape.
Well, that is accurate, but then I think they had enough dislike history to lead to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sirius
Well.
just remained suspicious of Snape forever.
And then, I mean, Snape did relentlessly mock him for not being able to leave the house and help. But
that's what I said. There was enough history.
Yes.
But I mean, when they're teenagers,
There
there's
was
literally
no
no
reason. It was
reason.
stupid.
No, it's dumb.
Like, at least with James, he's like, oh God, this guy's like pining for my girlfriend. Like, ew.
Yeah, and what I
And called her mudblood.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, it wasn't his girlfriend, though. It was like literally his love interest who had no desire to be with him. So it was all just
Oh,
like
I meant like when they're like, I was going to say seniors.
seniors.
7th years.
Seventh
when they
years.
are dating and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like James's hatred could have grown at that point to be like, I don't like you.
Well, probably. I mean, but it was
Pass.
like an instant. I don't like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just didn't like the way he looked. Aha.
That's true.
Yeah.
Which is
'Cause
normal
that's how it is on the
kid,
train.
at least, back in these days. That is
Oh, yeah,
normal
kids are-
kid behavior, and it sucks.
Kids are
Definitely assholes sometimes.
Yeah, and what I prefer about the book version to the movie version is you do get to see like the difference between a rational adult trying to explain. You don't have to like people or be friends with them or have any feelings about them whatsoever to work
can be neutral towards
collaboratively with
people.
them when you have the same desire, the same end goal.
Exactly. That's something that I've been trying to impress upon many of my students.
Yeah, I try to impress it
Lately?
upon my 8-year-old daughter. You don't have to know people
Like or
well
dislike.
or like them or want to be friends with them to want to work with them to accomplish a shared goal. You just
Exactly.
don't.
And that's exactly what Remus is saying in this moment in the book.
And
it
Harry,
doesn't
like
quite
a
have
normal
it like
teenager,
that.
is just not getting it.
16, man.
Yep.
It's hard. You can't pay me to go back to that.
Oh, God, no. I'm good. But then in the book, we get to the end of Celestina's program, and she ends it on a loud, long, high note. And then
That Jim Dale executes perfectly.
he really does. But then they've got applause coming through the wireless, and Mrs. Weasley's applauding too. And Fleur's just like, oh, it's over.
She's such a bitch sometimes.
And Mr. Weasley's just like, how about an God. And I did like that. To me would have been way funnier than the shit they did give us.
Open up, you.
Oh God, don't. We're not there yet. We're getting there. I don't
We'll
want
be there
soon. But he goes to get eggnog for everybody, and this is when Harry transitions the conversation into that relationship building one with Lupin. He's like, what have you been up to lately? And Lupin's just like, yeah, well, I've basically been underground, literally. I'm Dumbledore's spy amongst the werewolves, so I haven't really been able to ride out, and it's been kind of tough because they don't really trust me since I've clearly lived among wizards. And
I like that he tells Harry that, though. He's
Yeah.
like, I haven't been able to write you because I'm literally doing work for the Order.
Yeah.
Instead of just leaving Harry in the dark.
Yeah. Well, and then on
'Cause
top
that
of
happens
that,
to
too,
Harry
I don't know about
way
you
too
guys,
much.
but like when I'm watching the movies, I'm like, what the hell is Lupin doing? Because I watched the movies before reading the movies. So like you're just like
Yeah,
left
like,
in the dark.
where the
You're
fuck
like,
has he
how?
been?
How are you helping? You seem like you're not doing much of anything.
Are you okay? Do you need antidepressants?
right, probably.
Eat some chocolate.
Yeah.
But this is when he brings up Greyback.
Ah!
And it's not the first time we've heard of him in the book, but
No.
he was mentioned in passing previously, whereas the movie has already just like flat out shown us Greyback, even though we don't necessarily know that's who that was,
Unless
even
you
though
paid
we
attention
knew
to
who
the
that was.
Wanted
There was a
posters.
wanted poster, yeah. It was like, it was there, but it was very glazed over.
But you don't know that he's a werewolf. You don't get it at all that he's a werewolf in the movie. They don't tell you.
Oh, you're
he's
right,
not a
they
werewolf
don't.
at all.
He's just a
He's
creepy fucking
guy.
dude.
Really? I thought he
He's
was
just
like
this
a
guy, you
hybrid
know?
version of like this is what happens to werewolves when they spend too long leaning into their like really gross urges.
And he is really
is, yeah.
gross because Remus is telling Harry all about how he's probably the most savage werewolf alive at this time.
He's like a comparison for pedophile.
yeah, he's
Yes.
a pedo. He's the Wizarding World's
absolutely.
version of a pedo.
Yeah.
He literally targets children and has this mission to bite as many people as possible. And like I said, targets children because he wants to bite them young and then raise them away from their families and build his own little werewolf army so that they can overpower the normal people. And in this conversation, we learned that it was Greyback who bit Remus when he was a kid because his father offended Greyback in some way.
He did not offend him. He took him, Lyle Lupin took him to the ministry because he attacked a muggle, and Lyle took him to be tried, and the ministry was like, he didn't do anything, and they let him go. And he figured out that it was Lyle, and he figured out where he was. Also, it's really weird to me that Remus is the only one whose father's name is not his middle name. Whatever. Remus Lyle Lupin. But that's what happened.
I mean, I can see how Greyback would take offense in that.
I think he killed like a homeless muggle or something.
Probably.
And so Lyle took him in because he saw it.
You didn't do anything. Ugh.
Yeah, yuck.
Ugh.
I mean, he didn't do anything we're that upset about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what that boiled down to.
I mean, we're pretty upset about it, but clearly the ministry wasn't. But yeah, like that positioning himself to be able to target children, and then this being the person that Voldemort's like, hey, you seem like a good werewolf leader.
Even though he doesn't think werewolves are worth his time.
No,
at
but
all.
he views them as a good
They're
army.
an asset.
Yeah, they're not something he values. They're something he can use.
So I was about to say they're not assets because he doesn't value them. They're resources
that's
he
true,
can
yeah.
tap
They're
out.
resources.
They're
They're
resources.
disposable.
That's a good-
I don't
yeah.
care. And there's a lot of you.
This whole thing just gets, there's none of this in the movie.
Yeah.
None of it.
Nope.
You don't even find
even
out
a
that
little bit.
Greyback is the one who bit Lupin.
No, you
don't
have
even know
no
that
idea how
Lupin-
he became that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like, he doesn't even say he was bitten. Like, he could have been born a werewolf for all we know. So,
Yeah, in the movies they make it sound like it's a genetic affliction for some people.
for some people, it's an abnormality.
Yeah, it's... Ugh. I also love the fact that it then gets a lighter tone, because when he says that...
It's a furry little problem.
Yeah, when he
my
says
favorite.
that Greyback is leading the werewolves to get revenge on normal people, Harry's just like, what? You are normal. You just have a problem. And it reminds...
Once a month.
Yeah, it reminds Remus of how James used to refer to it as his furry little problem.
And people thought he had a misbehaved rabbit.
Yeah.
I love that.
And like, it's just sweet because talking about this with Harry seems to make Remus look more cheerful. And movie Remus really could have used looking a little more cheerful.
They don't do Remus justice.
No.
Remus, at 21, lost all 3 of his best friends.
Yeah.
All 3 of them. And the people who were the only people who were his friends in his life. First time he ever had friends was when he went to school. And he was 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's depressed for 12 years before he ended up finding out that Sirius was alive and actually was not the one who killed his
And
other
then
best
he
friend.
proceeds to lose him.
And then he proceeds to lose him because why not?
Yeah.
Sucks.
It's rough. And at this point in the book, he doesn't have Tonks yet.
Kind of, but kind of not. But kind of.
He's not willing to accept that he has Tonks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also sheds, again, all of that backstory and stuff in the books, sheds light on, again, Snape and I will never be friends. There's too much bad history. But I do appreciate what he's done for
Right.
me to help me be more normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Lupin is a reasonable person.
Yeah.
What I also love about this conversation is then it sort of naturally, because of the mention of Harry's father, turns into Harry bringing up the Half-Blood Prince for him, because he's still kind of holding on to that hope that maybe, just maybe, his dad is the Half-Blood Prince, even though he's full-blood. Mm-hmm. But when he mentions the Half-Blood Prince, Lupin's like, there aren't any wizarding princes. Is this a title you're thinking of adopting?
love
Is
that
the
one.
chosen one not
Not
enough
good
for you? And Harry's just like, it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's someone who used to go to Hogwarts. I have his old potions book.
Come on.
That's how I think that sounded.
Yes, I'm not that arrogant. Please stop it.
So I was listening to this chapter last night in preparation for this. Harry looks at the book and it's 50 years old.
Yeah, after the fact.
Yeah. So Eileen Prince was at school with Voldemort?
Apparently.
Odd.
Apparently.
Hook up in the bathroom.
And it
Was
is
it? Was
Lupin.
he? Yeah, I was gonna say, was he at school with, or was it really just like I got this old version of the book, so I feel really comfortable writing in it, even though I didn't go to school?
It was his mother's
It's his mom's book, is
Yeah.
what I was saying. So his mom was at school with Voldemort.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So intrigue for
Intrigue
me.
indeed.
I just was like, oh, 50 years ago, just like in Chamber of Secrets, they were like 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So she might
I
have
didn't ever
been-
made that connection.
starting out at Hogwarts when he was
Perhaps.
I don't know, mayhaps.
She could have been a little older than him.
Well, if the book was 50 years old and you're probably
Oh yeah, they maybe were in the same grade.
Maybe.
Wow. Interesting.
Intrigue.
Yeah, the timeline in these stories is always messes with me.
It's a little fuzzy.
Yeah. But Harry never flat out asks if his dad is the half-blood prince. He just sort of like shares his reasoning as to why he's asking him about this. He was just like, he wrote a lot of spells in it. One of them was Levi Corpus. And Lupin's just like, oh yeah, that was really popular during my 5th year. And Harry's just like, yeah, my dad used it on Snape.
In that memory that I wasn't supposed to see.
Right. And then Lupin immediately gets it. He knows what Harry's asked. And he's just like, he was not the only one to use that spell. Like I said, very popular. So Harry's just like, yes, but. And then finally he's just like, so it's not you or Sirius. It's definitely.
Your father was a pureblood.
Yeah.
And I promise he never asked us to call him Prince. I love that.
Yeah.
But the softness that comes with Remus in this moment, in explaining this, the calmness that's behind all of it, why was that not in the movies?
Who the fuck was that in the movie? Because it was not
David
Remus
Thewlis
Lupin.
was just angry. I'm like, I gotta yell at this kid.
I'm like, oh my god. No, he definitely.
He's right. You
I
only
love
saw
him
that
so
when he was
much.
a werewolf. You only saw the anger when he was a werewolf.
Yeah. I love him so much, but this was not it in that moment.
No.
But then, like I said, he tells him, look for when the book was made. Like, how old is it? Maybe that'll give you a clue as to when the prince was at Hogwarts. And then the night is just brought to a screeching halt when Fleur decides she's going to just belt out an imitation of Celestina Warbeck. And
Is she drunk right now? Like, calm down.
I just feel like literal record scratch. The room goes silent. And the look on Mrs. Weasley's face is enough to have everybody be like, Nigel! All right.
Yeah, we're
night,
off to
everybody.
bed.
Like, woo, yeah. And Harry and Ron climb all the way up to Ron's attic room.
Why does Ron have the best room? Like, his room is the best. I know he hates it, and he's like, it's small, and blah, blah, blah. His room is the best. Yeah. He has, like, his own little porch. He can go out and look outside, and it's beautiful. Like, he has the best room.
Yeah.
I always wanted an attic room when I was a kid. But all the way up to the attic room. But I want the soft Remus moments.
No, yeah, we definitely did not
baby
get that.
moments.
We got the yelling. And then we got more cringe.
We do. Instead of this whole world building, actual relationship building stuff that happens between characters, we get David Thewlis screaming at Harry about how he's blinded by hate and he hates Snape, even though there hasn't really been like any hate towards Snape outside of him being like, but
there's no need to call me sir.
Yeah, we don't get any of that information.
Should have.
But then it transitions into...
I just love, it's like Tonks is kind of upset with Remus being all pissy, and Mrs. Weasley keeps calling for Ginny, so I kind of felt like maybe she was going to help Mrs. Weasley too and just walk away from the situation. But Remus seems to recognize that she is upset and follows her. And then it just leaves Harry and Mr. Weasley sitting there with a pillow on his lap, which he barely said anything in the whole conversation either. He was just like barely. He was just there, whereas the conversation was literally with him in the book.
Yeah, like the conversation is led by Mr. Weasley for sure in the books, but they just like are like, meh.
Yeah.
Meh. We're going to have David Thewlis scream a little bit. But then we have Jenny come in with a plate full of cookies.
I thought they may have been cookies or something.
And then she says, open up, you. Like,
and Harry's just sitting there like, what? Which is what we're all doing, if we're being honest.
Truly. Dan was like, I have to do what now?
Dan was all of us in that moment.
Yeah. She's just like, do you trust me? And it's like, no, bitch, I don't trust anybody. I'm the chosen one. Like, that's the proper response.
Yeah. And like, are you Aladdin? Do you have an apple and a magic carpet? No. So I don't trust you, because that's what he says before he pulls Jasmine.
But maybe she wants to show him the world.
Well, according to Dave Matthews, she can if she pulls up her skirt a little more. Ooh. But
oh my God, we're so going to hell.
It's fine. But she feeds him a cookie or something.
I don't know. It's food and it's disgusting.
Awkward because, as aforementioned, feeding people food is awkward. Unless you're a mom feeding your baby.
Right. I do love, though, that the moment Ginny walks in with a plate of cookies and sits down next to
Mr. Weasley's
Harry,
like,
Mr. Weasley's just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Peace out, yo.
He knows how much she liked him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And for how long she's liked him. So he's like, I know my place. Goodbye.
I'm not going to witness this.
He's a good only one girl dad.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's very aware.
He's a good dad.
He's a good dad all around. But he's like, oh, I'm paying attention to what's happening in my child's life.
Yeah.
Let me move.
And he approves of Harry, so that makes it easier.
Well, that does make
For
it
sure.
easier. That's true.
And it's definitely such an awkward moment. I don't know if he knew she was going to feed him a fucking cookie, but he did not want to witness that.
Awkward. And then
I'm not sure that any of us wanted to
No,
witness
none of us did. We
did
could have
not.
died not seeing that scene.
and you know what? Next week I have to read about the shoelace.
Woohoo.
Really, though,
But-
they could have just had her come sit on the couch and then Ron get in between them before anything happened.
Yeah, she could have been like trying to say something to him.
Yeah.
Not feed him. Ugh.
And then Ron basically tries to feed him too.
He's like, you want a pie? And then he eats a pie. And I'm like, sir.
And then he puts the one bite pie back on the plate.
He
of
does.
pie.
And I'm like, shook. No,
Oh
we
my
don't
God,
do that.
There's just so many things wrong with that scene. And that's what they thought we needed. Screaming Lupin and cringe.
And cringe.
Yep.
And Harry trying to hide a boner because he does cross his legs he like squeezes his legs super tight and puts his hands on his lap.
I mean,
and I'm
Ginny
like, all right,
legit put something in his mouth. So...
that turns people on. All right.
I never
okay,
interpreted the scene
apparently.
that way until you said that.
You're not going to be able to unsee it now.
Sorry.
I know, it's okay.
Happens.
Like I said, I've embraced the fact I'm going to hell.
Do we need to cover new actors?
I mean,
It's David Thewlis.
David Thewlis, which we did definitely talk about him in the moment, and I would really just end up repeating things that I already said, that I love him, but that wasn't it for me.
Yep.
But I probably would assume that's a director's choice.
I would assume so too. Because, you, David.
You, David, indeed.
You, David squared. Yeah, it's, yikes. Well,
And then everybody else was in it previously. I mean, Tonks, but Tonks and Remus definitely have a bigger moment in the next part of the scene.
yeah.
So we can talk about them more then. That's cool. That'll just bring us to our pottering.
and who came up with this Potter pondering but me?
And I can't imagine any of you are going to wonder why.
How do you feel about the changes they gave to Remus's personality in the movie?
Find the post on our Facebook page and share your thoughts. Or call us at 216-526-6792 and leave your response as a voicemail. Make sure you start off telling us your name and then go into your answer. Don't forget, you can also stitch your response on TikTok.
We really look forward to reading, hearing, and seeing them.
This week we have a wizarding word. Again, you can always send in a Sorting Hat story if you want to. We are still accepting them whenever. So this week's wizarding word is our major content update since Hogwarts Legacy first launched in February last year. And that is, there's a new one announced for September. There's a trailer for it in this article, so we'll show the article and you can check that out. It'll be up on our Facebook, but it is basically a Quidditch game. It's got kind of a Fortnite-esque aesthetic, as the article says, and it's going to allow players to compete in tournaments, either solo or with friends. So this looks awesome. It sounds really cool. If you played Hogwarts Legacy, you'll probably already be familiar with some of the mechanics of the game and much excited. But yeah, like I said, we will have this up on our Facebook and you can check it out for yourself.
This week's trivia question is, what does Creature give Harry for Christmas? The first one who responds with the correct answer and the code word, #Don'tFeelGuilty, will get a sticker.
Another way to get a sticker is to rate and review us through iTunes. If you don't have an Apple account, then you can write us a recommendation on our Facebook page. Make sure to email us at foxsakepod@gmail.com and let us know you did, and we'll get back to you to figure out which sticker you want and where to send it.
Don't forget to find us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Fawkes Sake Pod. Following us on Podbean at Fawkes Sake Pod We'll get you the episode as early as possible and give you a leg up in answering the trivia question. You can also go to our website at forfawkesakepodcast.com to check out our For Fawkes Sake and Harry Potter related merchandise for sale.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we post our weekly podcast episodes, cooking show episodes, vlogs, bloopers, and other random videos.
If you would like to become a patron, you can find us on Patreon at Fawkes Sake Pod. Patronage starts at $2 and will get you some awesome perks like For Fawkes Sake swag, access to our Discord channel, chats, and more. Check out our page for the details. Any support you can give is greatly appreciated. And join us next time when we talk about the second half of Chapter 16, A Very Frosty Christmas, and the film scenes that don't really correspond at all.
Thanks for listening.
We hope you hear us again. I'm Karlee.
I'm Abigail.
I'm Ellen, and we are
For Fawkes Sake.